the end of the day, only one can emerge victorious. Bold predictions were made, the die were rolled, who would triumph in the now annual Tasmanian state election. And the winner? The Fontcast whiteboard of truth has come up, trumps correctly predicting Saturday's election result. And so for that matter, have our show sponsors, Enterprise Marketing and Research Services, besting all comers in also correctly predicting the result, including the much vaunted YouGov, who, for the record, were way off the mark. More importantly, of course, Saturday's election was a triumph for Jeremy Rockcliffe and the Liberals, and it was a rolled gold disaster for Dean Winter and Labor. Labor's fifth state election loss in a row. Hello, I'm Brad Stansfield, and welcome to the Fontcast, Tasmania's leading political podcast even. We are definitely the leading Fontcast as well, David. Joining me today to take you through the on-trials of Saturday night and what's next is the Mercury's chief political reporter, David Killick. Hello, David.
Great to be here, and I can feel the bags under my eyes from a very, very late night on Saturday night. I should be getting used to it by now. But,
it's great, though, isn't it, the tradition down there at the tally room?
It's just a party atmosphere. There was a great place for the party faithful to turn up, wave some banners, block the cameras, a bit of heckling, a bit of
less than usual.
Less than usual.
I did see a little bit of sort of camera bombing on the ABC broadcast with Senator Erica Betts and some Greens getting in there with some various things in the background. Yeah,
as long as they look politically engaged and involved, that's what we want.
No, look,
brainwashed almost. You might say.
And I was down there, have been there for the last 20 years. And I've got to say, it was actually, and we'll come to it a bit, it was a very, very different atmosphere to last state election, even though it's pretty much the same result. It was really a sense of Liberals had won, whereas last time it was a sense that maybe the Liberals had lost. Anyway, unfortunately, AJ's late scratching for today are still up in Launceston, but I think we can manage it between us, David. So let's get straight into it. The call of the card at this stage is, as per the predictions of the whiteboard of truth, 14 Lib, 10 Labor, 5 Green, 4 Independent, with a couple seats still to be confirmed, one in Bass and one in Lyons still outstanding. 40% primary vote for the Libs, which was a swing of 3.2% their way. 26% for Labor, with a swing of 3% roughly against them. Worst result since 1903. That's just a little while ago. The Greens basically unchanged, and that's, as we thought would happen, failed to launch, and the Indies picking up perhaps a seat less than expected. David, perhaps before we have a quick look at the whiteboard of truth, what was your overall impressions of the night and the result?
Yeah, look, I like to try to wait until it's about 20% of the voting before I start making bold predictions. It was clear from the early booths. I mean, that early swing against Labor was sort of in the order of 6 and 7%, and it was interesting having a chat to a couple of Labor people in the tally room, even I think about 7:30. So here, an hour and a half into the count, you've got about 3 or 4% of the vote counted. Very glum, and I feel like they knew something that I didn't, about the internals of the campaign and how it went. So the point you made about the Liberals running a better campaign, I think that was, in the end, undeniable. You don't get a good sense from necessarily where I stand of what the ground campaign is like. But I have no doubt that Labor, if they're good at one thing, it's to be doing postmortems on election losses. Certainly got some experience in it now. So commiserations to all of those who stood and lost. It's a great thing that people put their hands up, and we're a small state with a relatively large parliament, so we need to get that talent through the door. Really interesting. I was sort of reflecting this morning as I came in how much money we've spent on electorate offices for people who, the paint's barely dry on a few of them, and we've probably got 5-year leases, or 4-year leases anyway. And I wrote my column on in Sunday's paper. Maybe we're going to have to start to look at fixed 4-year terms. Someone's told me already that's a stupid idea. But I reckon around this time next year, or maybe coming into spring, it's going to start to look pretty good.
I reckon Tasmanian people will be pretty keen for fixed 10-year terms at the moment, David.
Yeah, we'd have to start.
They have them in New South Wales, don't they?
Most states do.
Yeah.
Yeah, we would do it online or, with a text message.
So I remember getting in trouble because my wedding was on election day, and the news director was like, "You know what day it is?" I'm like, "I don't. I'm only new to this state." Anyway.
Well, a normal person.
Yeah.
All right. Let's just have a quick look at the whiteboard of truth and how that lined up in tonight and how we are with the ins and outs. Just quickly, David. Braddon, I think we're ending up with four Liberals, as we had flagged being a possibility. Gavin Pearce in. No Greens, Green missing out, which allowed the Libs in. The Libs got 50% of the primary vote, I think, didn't they, in Braddon?
Absolutely spot on. To the second decimal place.
Wow.
Yeah, really good performance by the Liberals. Really good strategy running those, recycling those leftover federal candidates in the North.
Bringing new talent in, David.
New talent in.
And Jeremy got just a few votes.
Welcome to first grade to the...
Yeah.
What did he end up with, like 10,000 or something?
No, what's the number there, David?
Mr. Rockcliffe received 20,252
Oh my goodness.
primary votes so far.
I should have updated.
Is 2.5 quotas.
I feel that might
on his own.
I feel that might be approaching
Wow.
the second greatest number ever, behind only Peter Gutland's post-COVID.
Yeah, I think 23, 24 will get you there, but we're only
Still
what do we haven't counted? There's
still
a lot of
25% to go.
still to be counted.
Yeah, so 4 Libs there. Labor 2, very disappointing performance by them. David, not sure they even got to 25%, did they there?
23.69 in
very
Braddon.
ordinary.
Not a healthy 100
No.
round.
And as predicted, Craig Garland romped it in well over a quota there, I think, David.
I think all of the independents improved their vote this
Yeah.
time around. Asterisk. If you're an ex-Lambie,
Real independence.
ex-Lambie independent, that's
Well,
a
Garland
slightly
must have
different story.
basically doubled his voting and he got like
Yeah.
0.6 of a quota last time, I feel.
That's right. I think he's done considerably better this time.
So there we go. So the Libs were looking for an extra 1 to get to 14 at least, and they did pick that up in Braddon last night. Lyons, David, I'll let you switch to your another one there.
Lyons is my
So-
favourite.
We said 3 Libs, and we thought Joan Hallett had topped the poll, and that appears to have happened.
Correct.
We said 2 Labor and Brian Mitchell would get in. I think that appears to have happened, or will happen, David.
Yeah, that we'll see Casey Farrell,
Casey Farrell,
one of the short-termers, unfortunately.
very short political career.
Also,
I'm sure he'll be
also
back.
ran.
I'm sure he'll be back.
Very relaxed in the tally room on
Was he?
Saturday night. Very
Tabitha Badger
sanguine.
for the Greens, I think pretty easily elected with about a quota as we thought would happen. And the last seat, interestingly, is still up for grabs, and it's not as we predicted. This is perhaps one we got wrong. Wasn't John Tucker. Tuck's not back. It's actually looking like Carlo De Falco from the Shooters, Fishers, Farmers Party may snag that 7th seat in Lyons, David.
Lyons is really interesting. Remember about 3 or 4 elections ago, Kevin Harkins ran a protest party and they got about 6.5% of the
Like
vote.
the recreational fishing.
Or something, and you get this in Lyons from time to time. Carlo's run before.
Lots of times together.
I think these JLN votes are just a floating block. I mean, he's got 7% of the vote this time around. I put that down to absence of the Lambie network.
Yep.
And the swing against Labor. So
interesting,
good result for him.
But very interesting. He got the vote ahead of the Nats. Seems to me like the Tasmanian voters across the board: John Tucker, Elise Archer, Andrew Jenner, others. None of these, they don't forget. They've got a bit of a long memory, the Tasmanian voters.
No, there was a fairly emphatic result for the former JLN.
It certainly was.
Members. Mr. Jenner, 607 votes in Lyons was perhaps not the result he was looking for.
Little short. I saw last night that our good friend Mr. Kevin Bonham noted that he thinks Carlo's the most likely for that 7th, a very outside chance for the 4th Libs there, he indicated, but I think Carlo is looking pretty good.
I think the only thing I'd speak against his chances is that, the preference flows. There's not a logic. There's about, a third of a quota there from the Nationals that might go his way, but that'll leak all over the place. So
That's probably right.
who knows?
All right, we missed Bass. I don't know why I skipped over Bass. Bass, as per the Whiteboard of Truth, 3 libs, Bridget Archer easily topping the poll there, transferring to the Tasmanian Parliament. Some new talent coming in for the Liberals. ALP 2, at least. We'll come back to that. So they get Janie Finlay, top the poll there. And who's the second one going to be, David, on your guess?
My guess would be, it's going to be either Jess Green or Jeff Lyons. They're both sitting on about 1,900, so 2.19
Okay.
progressive quotas.
The Greens got a... play on words there, David. Very good. The Greens got a seat, and unfortunately, and as David tended to be probably off here, maybe we pumped with our hearts rather than our heads for AJ. Looks like Rebecca Pentland, or in fact Rebecca Penthouse, I think Richard Hur caught her on the 7 broadcast on Saturday night. Unfortunately, looks like she's going to miss out. And that 7th seat, Kevin Bonham, and who would ever question Kevin Bonham, currently has Labor favourite to win a 3rd seat in Bass from 27% of the vote. That would be extraordinary, David.
Oh, look, it's a pretty bold call from here. They're 0.8 of a quota short. Where it comes from, some Greens success preferences. I just don't know. I'd be, I'm not that brave. I'll let him have
We
that
won't
one.
know that one for a few weeks. All right, just quickly moving on. Clark, we said 2, 2, 2, 1. If I read the right side of the slashes on the whiteboard there, and we did indeed get 2, 2, 2, 1. And as predicted, Marcus Vermey topped the poll for the Libs, will be elected. And I think at this stage, unfortunately, it looks like Madeleine Ogilvie may be losing her seat. Hard to see her hanging on, David.
Yeah, I think she'll be very disappointed with that. Interesting results for Labor there. Josh Willie and Ella Haddad will be returned. Luke Martin,
Didn't go so well.
gave it a red hot go, but he's first time though.
Yeah, no,
First time. So
Hopefully, we got someone in Parliament now that's going to stand up for butchers.
there you go.
Poor butchers have been given a hard run by this net zero rubbish. So you fight, Marcus. Do it with your heart.
Diversity always a good thing.
That's right.
Luke Martin and John Kamara actually finished pretty close to each other, or are pretty close to each other at the moment. So
Okay. And I did want to give a shout out to what appears to be the last place getter in Clark. My mate, your mate, your mate. I'm sure Sam, Mr. John McGowan, currently sitting on 236 votes. I saw John in the tally room on Saturday night. He was very upbeat about it all.
Is that the last place?
Yes, I think he's coming last, Dave, at the moment. I think he'd be quite proud of that.
Yeah.
John, of course, is a Glenorchy boy who's done all sorts of things over the last 15 years. But, good to see everyone having a crack.
a couple of other interesting things. Elise Archer didn't,
Oh,
also, I think I'll probably say this a few times, didn't perform perhaps as well as she might have hoped. 3%. I don't know whether she'll run again. Might take people a while to get used to the idea of her as an independent.
Is that the first time she actually has run since the Liberals?
I think she
Yes.
suggested she might run.
It's the first time she's actually...
This is the first one.
Selection.
So,
it's the first one.
So Elise Archer...
Since the big falling out.
That billboard, that magnificent billboard
Familiar
down in
face.
Sandy Bay didn't perhaps do the trick. And I think, good result for the Greens in Clark, because I had that 2 seats there at the last election was a bit of a surprise, and I wasn't sure that they would necessarily be able to defend it. So that was good. Christy Johnson increased
Very strong.
her first preference vote and is over a quota.
Yeah, very strong result for
1.2
her.
quotas, so 15%. Yeah, night for independence.
All right, and finally, again, as per the Whiteboard of Truth, Franklin, 2 Libs, 2 Labor. So the 2 Libs would be Erica Betts and Jackie Petrusma. 2 Labor, Dean Winter, well short of a quota, but he'll be elected. And I think currently Meg Brown's besting Jess Monday, David.
Yeah, that's squinting 2,500 to 1,700. So
Are they guaranteed 2 seats in Franklin?
Labor are guaranteed 2 seats, I think.
1.8 quotas at the moment. That'll.
With some preferences.
Again, a very poor result for them in the leaders' election.
Terrible.
Greens 1, as we thought. Rosalie was always going to win a seat. David O'Byrne returned easily, I think nearly a quota, and Peter George a massive vote again,
Absolutely.
as we'd expected.
What did he end up with?
Turnout.
Like 12,000?
17% of the vote. 10,000. So Peter George, who's run in 2 elections on a relatively narrow range of issues, received more primary votes than Labor leader Dean Winter by about 40%. That will be really interesting. I have a couple of theories about the popularity.
Tell me about it. Why? How does this happen? This dude who nobody knows, who has just come out
just
and
tapped into a popular sentiment that runs from the Huon Valley and down the the eastern beaches against this one issue. It's a great,
Is it real?
Well, clearly.
Well, yeah, it's absolutely.
That doesn't mean it real.
Absolutely. But I mean, have a look at where those votes
Jackie
came
Lambie
from.
gets votes.
Rosalie Woodruff's held up pretty well. I don't think those voters are people who would otherwise have voted for the Greens. About half of them, would have had a Green tendency. So where
I think
his excess goes, I actually think that puts Nick Street in the hunt.
I think it's hard. The Liberal vote has held up pretty well. I mean, what are they, 34%?
Yep.
But to me, that indicates that most of Peter George's votes have actually come from the Labor Party, whose vote has one that's fallen quite badly.
Exquisite swing.
We'll see. Look, as to why he went well, I'm sure Sam and David had nothing to do with the $60,000 he got from Climate 200 and the fact he ran the most cashed-up campaign probably in the election statewide. Strangely, Mr. George and the Greens have been very quiet about cashed-up.
So he's a teal.
But the number of volunteers that he has speaks to something else that's going on.
There's no doubt that there is
on here. I mean, some of them. I don't know how many volunteers the major parties have. They're pretty thick on the ground. But someone said I think he had 900 volunteers.
Sounds like a bit of an exaggeration, but there's no doubt that he has tapped into. Yeah, he's. I think your characterisation, he is a teal. In fact, Climate 200 basically confirms he's a teal, Sam.
Yeah, 100%. There's no doubt.
On that basis, I think he might even be the first male teal to be elected to a parliament in Australia. Anyway, and then of course David O'Byrne, as we had predicted. We won't forget you, David. Don't worry.
Back with an increased vote.
Easily re-elected with an increased vote. So, put all that together. As per the Whiteboard of Truth, we've ended up with 14, 10, maybe 11, 5, 0. 5 if we count Carlo as an indie, even though he's a shooter, and there will be. Does that get us to 35, David? And pretty much.
You're asking I'm the wrong one.
Still.
Don't ask me to add it up.
I think we're a couple short of certainty.
Yes, but I think Lib minimum is 14, Labor minimum is 10. Lib's an outside chance of 15 in Lyons. I think it's unlikely but possible. Labor, according to Kevin Bonham, an okay chance of maybe getting to 11, which would be extraordinary given their votes gone backwards across the board. But anyway, that's the vagaries of Hare Clark as we flagged the other day. All right. David, any other sort of overall comments?
Well, I and this might be a topic for another podcast once the vote's been finalled. I don't detect the influence of the stadium as strongly as I would have thought there. That's a bit all over the shop. That's a lot of people who there was a dearth of those right wing independents that I know we can talk about the Lambie Network all day long, but I'm just not sure where the protest vote ended up this time. That particularly I think Lyons, it's fairly obvious. Bass and Braddon, I think people just drifted back to the Liberals, saw what was on offer, and went with certainty. I think perhaps the central message of this campaign was, the results of the independents, and of this result, the results of independents, but also that, people saw what was on offer, really didn't think that, sorry, I'll get to this point in a minute. I secured us through it.
Take your time.
And just went, look, we'll stick roughly where we were 12 months ago. So the punishment was not for the government, for the spirits, or for the budget, or any of the many, many issues that they're struggling to deal with. It was for Labor for bringing this on. Yeah,
I think that's ultimately where it ended up. They brought it on. They didn't have a plan. They didn't have an alternative. And as we mentioned last week, a few days ago, in fact, once they absolutely copied the government on the stadium, that basically did neutralise as an issue. We'll go through some of the insights from the EMRS track polling shortly, but one thing that did show was at the start of the campaign, the stadium was the number one issue, unprompted 22% of people. By the last week of the campaign, it had fallen down to third place, I think 16% behind both health and cost of living, which shows you how it drifted out of consciousness as a campaign issue. The Greens tried to keep it there, but with Liberal and Labor locking in, and despite the Mercury's best efforts to keep it at the forefront of people's minds, David, it wasn't. People didn't, by and large, vote on it. I think that's a very accurate assessment.
Yeah, well, the Greens were the logical place for that protest vote or that anti-stadium vote to go, and they held steady.
Yeah.
So I was looking for some sign of it. The Libs have gone very well in Braddon, which I regard as the furthest point from the stadium, where the support for the stadium is probably the least. Can't really see it greatly in Clark, nor in Franklin. It seems to me that the largest single effect of this election is a backlash against Labor for making people vote again.
I think that's exactly correct. All right. We could talk about the campaign and campaign issues all day, David, but probably people are a bit over that at the moment. A couple of things I did want to just mention, as I said, as now a matter of public record, our show sponsor, Enterprise Marketing and Research Services, did undertake the Liberal Party's track polling for the campaign. That track polling proved to be remarkably accurate. Not remarkable, no surprise to me, but certainly was remarkably accurate in terms of predicting the result. Within a few points for the Libs and pretty much spot on for anybody else. Was under for the Libs, David. Always good to underestimate your client's strengths. A couple of things, though, in it which I did want to talk about, which I thought people might find interesting. So at the start, remember at the start of the campaign, and this I think supports the thesis that the Libs are in the better campaign, so there was a poll, EMRS had a public poll, May, I think, David, so that was when Labor was ahead, 29, Lib 31 Labor, I think. That was probably emboldened Mr Winter to go down the path he went down. First Liberal poll in the first week of the campaign had Libs on 31, Labor on 28. By the end of the campaign, the rolled track, that's the final Tuesday, the Libs were 37 and Labor was 26. So that's a 6-point lift over the campaign for the Libs, 8 points if you count the poll before the election, and of course by the Saturday, I'm sure it strengthened after MRS's poll, Libs got to 40. So clearly ran the superior campaign, and I think the numbers clearly bear that out. And I think David, sort of anecdotal evidence, feeling around the place, bore that out.
Yeah, look, I mean, if polling's an inexact art, having a look at the
Comments.
the comment sections and the letters and the Facebook comments, I felt a lot more anger for the government early in the campaign and potentially a lot more support for Labor. There was a lot more anger in general at the beginning of the campaign, and it settled down over the course of the 5.5 weeks. I feel like that polling represents what I was feeling from reading thousands upon thousands of comments and deleting the odd one that got a bit spicy. People were really cranky. The government had a real issue, and I think they ran the Tasmanian Shore stuff. I don't think it's necessarily the best thought out policy in the history of Tasmanian political life, but it got people talking.
It did.
And it got people talking about an issue other than the budget, other than the stadium, other than the other issues we face. So,
as I think I said last week, and again looking at the track polling, that week that they announced that, week 3, so the Liberal vote increased from 34 to 37% across that period. It dominated the debate.
Well, it's about cost of living and addressing and I think that's what most people wanted to hear, but they didn't hear it all.
It was interesting, David. As you said, it was a big idea. It was the only real big idea. I mean, Tassie Doc, but I mean, that was just sort of like,
We had privatisation was a big, bold idea, but
that sunk pretty quick, didn't it?
We kept quiet about it.
A couple other campaign insights from EMRS, which I think are useful to know. Gender split. So I don't think it's any real secret that the Liberal Party federally has a so-called, and use the term, politically incorrect, a woman problem in terms that they've really struggled over recent campaigns to have female voters vote for them. The start of the campaign, even with Jeremy here in charge, and Jeremy is obviously seen as a lot more moderate, or he's a lot more moderate, the Libs had a 10-point deficit on females versus male voters. By the end of the campaign, that had been erased and they were even. Now, that didn't happen by accident. I was on the other side of the world, David, but I'm pretty sure the first week, 10 days of the campaign, the Libs rolled out a number of sort of, want a better term, female-friendly policies, health policies, childcare policies, stuff like that. Like, they made a concerted effort to address it.
Look, I haven't, again, looked at the result in great detail, in granular detail in Bass, but, Bridget Archer will be a strong female voice in a Liberal government, asterisk, should one be formed, should it?
It will be. But, yes, and I think it just shows to Liberals more broadly, this issue can be addressed with a little bit of smart policy and good campaigning. It's not an insurmountable mountain to climb. And the final point I just wanted to mention again out of the track polling was the demographics, the nature, the older voters in particular. It's no real secret. What's the saying? If you're not a communist when you're 15 or whatever.
You've got no heart.
Yeah, that's the one.
If you're not a
conservative by the time you're 30, you've got no brain.
That's something like that.
So what the initial polling showed was the Liberals were really shedding votes in the 60 plus category, based mostly to independents, really shedding those votes to independents. Their base had left them. By the end of the campaign, they had got that base back, which largely explains how their vote strengthened over the course of the campaign. They got disillusioned Liberal voters who were flirting with other things. Maybe they didn't like the stadium, maybe they were worried about the debt or whatever. They came back home.
And the independents really are the story of this. We've been very comfortable with a lot of independents in the upper house for many years. Have a look at the story that's emerging. I remember when Christy Johnson got in, and we all were, the novelty of having an independent in the House of Assembly. We now have 5 or possibly 6 independent and minor party people there. This is, they look like they're here to stay. These folk, at least, I can see this trend continuing if the major parties, the vote held up, the combined major party vote held up this time. That trend's weakening, but I just think having gone from one independent, thinking it a delightful novelty, to having 5 or 6, this looks like the way of the future.
Yeah, obviously lowering the quota, 35 seats has helped them a bit, although I think, in fairness, probably all of them would have got elected under the higher quota. You mentioned the primary votes of the major parties. 40% for the Liberals. God, Peter Dutton would have killed for 40%. He would have been Prime Minister. It's just, you give it a context, that's a very strong primary vote. Obviously, the Labor primary vote, not so good, but it does highlight, the Tasmanian political system is certainly geared to give you a different sort of parliament than one you get federally.
Yeah, well, it's almost an exact reversal of the result at the federal election held earlier this year. So if my numbers are right, the Liberals got about 25% of the primary vote there, and that was Labor's result.
Okay.
And Labor federally had a good campaign and I think got 36% of the primary vote. That's distorted a bit by the presence of an independent clerk.
3 months later...
3 months later, you've
a whole stack of people have voted completely differently.
Yeah.
State and federal issues, very different. All right. Time to get to the important part of the show. Who is going to form Tasmania's next
Here we go.
government? So, I said on the last pod that 13 seats wouldn't be enough for the Libs, and I think that's right, and that was right, and fortunately they haven't got 13. I said 15 would be enough to close it out. Unfortunately, I do not think they are going to get to 15. I think they are going to be stranded, despite their increased vote, on 14 seats. Now, I said 14 at the time was touch and go as to whether they'd stay or go. My view, and I'm interested in your views, David, but my view is given, as we've discussed, the swing to the Libs, the swing against Labor, the general tone and feeling in the community about how the election goes, I personally think that people would almost riot in the streets were we to see a Labor government commissioned out of this election campaign.
I think I would be more confident making a prediction of what's going to happen between now and when Parliament resumes than making one about what happens when Parliament resumes. But there's a fair bit of negotiations going on behind the scenes. Some of it rather adept, no doubt. Some of it less so, from what I hear. But I expect that, based on what the Premier said on Saturday night, the most likely outcome is he will go to the Governor. The Governor will commission the government. There's a little clause in the Constitution Act, is it 7 days after the return of writs? We're going to need a government of some form to get us through to when Parliament resumes, I think, mid to late September. My betting would be that we continue on with a Liberal government and a Liberal ministry until the resumption of Parliament. That's as brave as I can be.
David, you get the Gold Star Award for, unlike many of your colleagues in the media, particularly at the taxpayer-funded ABC, for actually understanding the Tasmanian Constitution and Westminster system. Well done.
So actually have a read of it to check something.
Well, maybe some other people
the other night.
Maybe some other people should do that.
The government continues until 7 days after the return of writs in 2010 because it was taking too long to resolve the impasse.
Right.
The Governor commissioned an interim or temporary ministry. I just don't see governments are decided on the floor of the House of Parliament, I think.
That's right. Yeah, look, I mean, I will say, and unfortunately, the level of constitutional illiteracy amongst a large section of the media in Tasmania, not you, David, but a large section is very, very high. There's all this talk I'm hearing about, how can the Premier get to 18? The Premier's going to lock in 18 before he can recommission. No, he does not need to do that. Possession is 9/10 of the law, maybe 10/10 of the law under the Tasmanian political system. The Premier merely needs to go to the Governor, as he's indicated he will, and say, look, I think I've got the numbers to keep on governing, and unless Mr. Winder can say, here's a signed piece of paper with 18 signatures on it, she will grant, and even then she may not, she will grant the Premier's wish to recommission him and sit the Parliament and see what happens. Even in 1989, when Robin Gray won 17 seats, Labor won 13, Labor did a deal with the Greens after the election they promised not to do, it's a familiar story, and had 18 seats in writing, and they went to the Governor. The Governor still commissioned Mr. Gray's government and said, if you're not going to be government, you have to be voted out on the floor, which of course is what happened. So the chances of Mr. Rockcliffe and the Liberals not being recommissioned at this point, in my view, are basically zero. And please, media, would you stop with this sort of hyperventilating about can he get to 18? He doesn't need to get to 18. The only one that needs to get to 18 at this point is Mr. Winter. Now,
so the question is then how long he can hold that
question
government
is,
together.
and it changes the dynamics. People need to understand this, and I think David clearly does. If Jeremy goes in and he's been recommissioned, it's then a matter of, are the independents going to vote him out? That's what they'd have to do. They'd have to support a no-confidence motion. So, sure, Ms Johnson's perhaps not the greatest friend of the Liberal Party, but is she going to vote him out on the floor of the Parliament? I don't think so. Is Mr George going to vote him out on the floor of the Parliament? I don't think so. Is Mr Garland? I don't think so. Mr O'Byrne? Highly unlikely. I just think...
Why not?
The chances of... It's very, very different to support a government to actually going in there and voting him out on the floor and therefore ipso facto saying you're supporting the other side, the former government. I just think it's highly, highly unlikely. And of course, across all of this, Mr Winter's going to have to deal with the Greens without dealing with the Greens, David. I don't know how that can be done.
It's going to be a very interesting few weeks in Tasmanian politics. An absolute hunger for news, and I think most of this is going to play out in backrooms and telephone calls and text messages. So there are precedents in Tasmanian political history for governments not lasting terribly long.
That's a different question, though.
Yeah, no, and the numbers that I was hearing from folk on the Liberal side on Saturday night was that they'd be pretty happy if they got to 15, which is still short of 18. You know, there's two aspects to this. One is the way things are at the moment. I mean, you wouldn't want to be in government. There's the challenges are many and manifest, and the other thing is this is going to be a very, you know, the word stability is mentioned often. This Parliament doesn't look, you know, like a happy hunting ground.
No, I mean, let's work on the correct basis that the Libs are recommissioned with 14 seats. Look, I can see Mr O'Byrne entering into another supply and confidence agreement. It seemed to work pretty well last time. You would think if the shooters get in, I don't know Carlo from a bar of soap, but I'm guessing by the word shooters he's probably slightly conservative. They would probably be prepared to enter some sort of agreement, and that's 16. I think Mr Garland will, and he has flagged he would enter an agreement this time potentially with the government, whoever the government is, or with the Libs. So I think we might get some more stability there. That just leaves, well, one vote short. So whether Ms Johnson and Mr George would be prepared to perhaps provide...
Well, you've got to find a speaker too.
A little bit more stability. Well, that's a separate matter, I think, to be fair. Probably. But a little bit more stability than they provided. Or certainly Ms Johnson did in the last Parliament. But, I mean, how long will the government last, David, I think is a separate question to who is going to be the government out of this election. And I think it is, everyone can sort of put their hyperventilation down. It will be Jeremy Rockliff and the Libs who are recommissioned.
We live in interesting times. I mean, the difficulty that we face as a state is almost, you know, an existential crisis. Yeah. If we continue to have elections every calendar year, we're going to develop a reputation. You know, it worked okay for Italy.
Even they've calmed down, haven't they?
For a while. I don't think it'll work so well for us. You know, the business community was out yesterday talking about the effect of this on confidence and uncertainty, and you know, we can't keep going.
Did Mr Bailey really say he'd be happy with either side to form government?
That was what I read.
Because that seems a bit odd, given one of them would need the Greens. Yeah,
it's
maybe that was a misspeak.
Whether you can or you can't, though, the fact is it's probably going to happen again.
What's that?
Yeah.
Another early election. The government won't be able to hold together.
The only certainty is uncertainty.
If you have until we get a majority government, and when's that going to happen?
Well, you know, and I've read a couple of analyses which, you know, add up. You know, Labor, the Greens, and the left-leaning independents. There is an argument that this Parliament is a more left-leaning, you know, more red than blue Parliament.
100%.
But you know, it's all you're stacking Jenga blocks on top of Jenga blocks here, and trying to build a stable, you know, base.
And what about then? You know, what about Mr Winter? It seems to me he doesn't really know whether he's Arthur or Martha. You know, he's sort of flagging that he wants to work with the Parliament, and you know, then sort of hinting that maybe he wants to form government, and briefing it out to the Australian others that he wants to form government. But then he's talking to the independents, not actually asking for their vote. I mean, my personal view, David, and obviously I'm slightly blue biased, but I think he should just accept the result and allow certainty prevail in the government to get on with the job. What do you think?
Oh, look, I think given my day job, where I have to bring a moderately impartial mind, I'll probably pause before I offer advice to elected representatives. I'll just let this play out. I'll revert to being a spectator.
I'll be reckless.
Apologise for my cowardice.
All right. Well, my very clear view, he does not have a chance of forming a government before the Premier is recommissioned, given he said he won't deal with the Greens. He's actually said on the record that the Premier gets first shot. Well, that actually means the Premier gets first shot to form government, which he will do. I think Mr Winter would be much wiser in the circumstances. Discretion's a better part of valour to accept the result the people have spoken and to allow the government to be reformed and for things to be gotten on with. I understand that it's going to be difficult. I understand that might pose questions for his leadership, which is perhaps why he's not doing that. But, you know, I don't think anyone wants to sort of drags out with weeks and weeks of the ABC hyperventilating about who's going to form the government and who's backing who.
Is he going to stay leader?
Well, I think that's perhaps part of the reason why he's still sort of pushing for the top job, because he might be worried that he won't be leader in those circumstances. David's still not going to comment, so I just...
Well, you know, I'm happy to say... I think he's as the Labor leader who's precipitated an election that's gone badly for Labor, there's going to be some soul searching. There's going to be some recriminations, and I think his position is weaker now than it was before the election. So, were I in his position, I'd be doing everything I could to hang on to a job, that job.
Yeah.
Premier, this, you don't know what's going to happen down the track. So, there's an opportunity here. I think my criticism of Labor at the last election would have been, you seize opportunities. I don't know how it will be decided. Last time I thought it was the admin committee met on the Sunday and handed down an edict. So,
well, my understanding is the admin committee gave and the federal executive, remember they're still under administration, gave permission before the election on Saturday for them to proceed to try and form a government. So that all happened.
Yeah.
But look, as for Mr. Winter and his leadership, I think, well, I don't really see any obvious alternative in there, David, at the moment. I mean,
well, I'll again leave that to Labor.
Well,
the question then arises: if Labor decides not to seize the nettle, what was that all about? Why did we go through this process? What was the point?
I think it's not so much a matter of not seizing the nettle as accepting that they tried to seize the nettle and they lost. I think it's different to last time when that argument could have been made. I think this time Labor's actually been defeated here. Not so much as seizing the nettle or trying to, it's so much as accepting the reality the voters have spoken. So I think that is a different dynamic. But yeah, you're right. I mean, sort of a losers either way, doesn't he? But as I said, Jeremy's going to be recommissioned. I think he's just better off letting that happen. Anyway, that's time. I know David's got to get to an appointment, so just very quickly before we go, and for the record, because I know that people do keep receipts, some of them. At the start of the campaign, I was very critical of the Premier and his team for preferring an election that I said they would likely lose, rather than the Premier resigning. For the record though, Sam, and check the tape, I did also say that every election was winnable, and I sincerely hoped that I was wrong and that Libs would be back. Well, I'm wrong. I was wrong, and I'm very glad that I was wrong as a Team Blue. And I've got to say to the Libs, to Sam McQuestion, the State Director, to Ned, to Lee, to Sandy, to Jess and the media team, to Vince, everyone else there, Premier of course himself, they did run, as I said the other day, and I think we'll agree, a really, really strong campaign. And one thing I didn't mention, David, which you maybe have a reflection on, was I thought the Liberals' social media was really, really high quality. Like, I was on the other side of the world, but wherever I looked, I saw it, and it was really
I must have my ad filters absolutely superbly locked down. It all washed over me. I got a slab of it on Instagram on Saturday night. It's just like
they clearly put a lot of time into it, and good social media does take a lot of time, and they clearly did that. Anyway, so credit to them for an outstanding result, of course, to excellent pollsters as well that helped. Yes, I do pardon those. And as for Labor, again, as I said last pod, I don't know whether he actually said it, but it's been reported down the ages that Sun Tzu said that you should never underestimate your enemy. Well, he'd clearly never met the Labor Party in Tasmania. So, very, very different. Anyway, that's about all we've got time for. David, thanks for coming in. Appreciate it.
Great.
Twice in 3 days. Look, we'll be back pending anything mad happening. It's Tasmania, we may not.
What are the odds of that?
We'll be back in a couple of weeks when the recommissioning takes place, and we can chat about perhaps who's going to be in the new government, the new ministry, the updated ministry and whatnot. Fontcast is brought to you by Enterprise Marketing and Research Services, Tasmania's leading research provider, QED, on Saturday night. Thank you, David. Thank you, Samuel. Don't forget you can catch us on our YouTube, which Sam's going to have up shortly. Fontcast is produced and directed by Sam Eichen for Eichen Media. And until next time, carry on.